I'm going to give a 30-minute overview of what I think it's important for youth and youth education to understand about our cultural, environmental, societal situation. And I can't fit that much into 30 minutes, so I will do my best to give like a hologram of how things fit together. We live in a culture today which rewards reductionist expertise. So we have lawyers and engineers and tech developers and financial people and where they fit in the system. But these people rarely fly up high enough to see how the pieces fit together. And so we now live in a world where the conversations about the future center around islands of expertise, which are separated by oceans of misinformation and resulting confusion. And we've arrived at a species level conversation where we have to have a view from the stratosphere in order to make better sense of how the pieces fit together, and they do fit together. So in a similar way, we have advocates and activists striving for policies that address their specific issues without a coherent vocabulary or map to see how their issue interconnects with other, perhaps equally important future needs. So by connecting the dots between disciplines and goals, a systemic, larger overview forms. And I can't cover the enormous complexity of this in 30 minutes, but I encourage you all to dig deeper in the inner workings of our system, because our education system is beginning to cover more on climate and ecology, though still not enough. But most humans aren't taught on how the full complexity of our system and what dynamics it rests upon. So quite simply, the human ecosystem is we take energy and materials and combine them into forms of technology that people want and use around the world. And we represent this all by financial digits and currencies. We do this all to get feelings matching the emotional states of our ancestors, and the entire process produces waste or pollution. And this basically is the human ecosystem. So underpinning this all is energy. Energy is effectively the currency of life. All organisms, including humans and our societies, need to have a larger caloric output than we have as an input. And so in nature, those organisms that have an outsized calorific income for the expense that they undergo chasing the prey have surplus for metabolism, cellular repair, mating, raising their young, etc. This also applies to human systems. We need an energy surplus in order to have universities and Disneyland and libraries and hospitals and Zoom calls. So for better or worse, fossil hydrocarbon and carbon are largely responsible for our modern wealth and our expectations of growth. This is a picture of me on my farm in Wisconsin. On a good day, I can do the work of about 1/10 of a horse. This is my horse, Inga, who's about 50 feet to my left right now. On a very good day, if motivated by treats, she can do the work of one horse. This is my utility vehicle that with a little bit of gasoline can do the work of 45 horses. My truck can do the work of 300 horses. And the next time you're on an airplane, imagine 100,000 invisible horses pulling that airline across the sky. That is the energy density and power in this stored sunlight that we're pulling out millions of times faster than it was sequestered. A barrel of oil, which currently costs around $90, has 5.7 million British thermal units of energy, which translate to 1,700 kilowatt hours worth of energy. The average human does about 0.6 kilowatt hours of work per day. So it effectively takes an average human being around 5 years of physical labor to do the same amount of work that's in a barrel of energy, a barrel of oil that we pay $90 for. So in the world, we use around 100 billion barrel of oil equivalents of coal, oil, and natural gas every year. So 100 billion times 4.5-ish is approximately 400 billion human worker equivalents that we're adding to the global economy, in addition to the work of around 5 billion real human workers. And we don't think about this. We take it for granted. We explain everything by technology and money and don't think about the energy and the ecology that is powering our system. So what this has done in the last century or so is it's increased the wages for billions of humans. It's increased the profits. It's reduced the price of things. And it's increased the size and the scale of the human enterprise, measured by the number of people and the amount of goods and services consumed per person. The human economy right now is 1,000 times bigger than it was just 5 centuries ago. So we have treated these fossil energy as if it were interest. But it's really principle that we're drawing down, and we're becoming heavily dependent on this finite resource. Our economy is 99%, our GDP, which is a measure of our goods and services, is 99% linked to energy and 100% linked to materials. The orange line here shows global economic growth. The purple line is the material footprint, so energy and materials. And the green line is our CO2 footprint. Our CO2 footprint is going up. It's going up at a slightly lower pace than our energy use because we are scaling renewable energy faster than we're scaling fossil energy, but we're still hitting all-time high emissions, and we just hit all-time high coal use in July, despite the growth in renewables. But something that we don't consider, because everyone on this call and our parents and our grandparents have all been alive during a time when our access to energy increased every year, with the exception of recessions, is that we are all alive during what historically might be called the carbon pulse, which is this tiny, tiny sliver in geologic time where we're drawing down fossil carbon millions of times faster than it was trickle charged in Earth's natural resource battery by photosynthesis in the past. So we have been 300,000 years as a species, and here's what that pulse will look like during that sort of a time frame. Here's what it looks like on a 20,000 foot time frame, and here's what it looks like on a 1,000 foot time frame. We are somewhere in the middle of that carbon pulse. Now, there are 2 narratives about this. There's one narrative, which is drill, baby, drill. This is a graph showing the United States oil production. We hit a peak in 1970. And then 40 years almost of decline. And then technology overcame this oil depletion, and we made new highs in oil production. Well, here's the same graph viewed a little bit differently. We did peak in 1970, and that was the high quality conventional oil in the lower 48 states. Then we added the oil from the North Slope of Alaska, which isn't contiguous to the lower 48, but it is part of the United States. Then we added the blue, which was oil under the Gulf of Mexico, which wasn't even on land, it was in the ocean. And then we added the red, which is light tight oil, also called shale oil, which is in the Permian, the Bakken, and other shale plays. This oil is special because it is the source rock. There is nothing left after that It is where all the original oil migrated from, and it depletes very rapidly. At around 80%, a well depletes in the first 18 months, and then we need to drill again. So this is effectively, we're draining America first, and we don't even talk about this. So real quickly on renewable energy is a little bit of a misnomer, because yes, it's true, the sun and the wind are renewable, but the machinery that we use to harness the sun and the wind has to be replaced every 20 or 30 years. So at best, it's rebuildable. And it doesn't directly replace what fossil fuels do, because there are different energy properties. Renewable is kinetic energy as opposed to potential energy, which means that it's moving electrons that we have to use right then, whereas potential energy is stored and we can flick a switch and use it. So our modern society infrastructure is designed around energy-dense, storable, transportable liquid fuel. And renewables are the right answer, I argue, to the wrong question. I think we can construct a viable civilization with renewable technology and declining fossil fuels, just not this one, just not at this level of consumption. This is a graph from one of my academic papers. The dotted line with the red arrow shows human demand during the day and night. The flat dotted line is nuclear power. The real dark line that goes up and down is wind power. So what ends up happening is both nuclear and wind are very divergent from when we want energy and need energy. Sometimes they produce not at all enough, and sometimes they overproduce. And so we need complicated machinery and lots of technology and batteries and other things in order to navigate this. Whereas natural gas, we just flick a switch and turn on the plant, and when there's no more demand, we turn it off. It's much more flexible. Briefly on materials, wind, solar renewables also require rare earth metals, which are also finite. They have destructive mining and industrial processes, many of which are primarily located in countries in the global south. Look at the materials and minerals used on the top bars in an electric car versus a conventional car. So as we scale, as we try to decarbonize our economy, we're going to at the same time rematerialize. And this is going to result the further degradation of land, natural systems, and as I mentioned, in the global south. Real briefly on money, when I was 14, my dad told me where babies came from, but he never told me where money came from. And money is effectively a claim on energy. When we spend money, it is spent on something that that needed energy to mine, create, deliver, repair, maintain, dispose of. So money in the economy are really a way to measure the total energy we burn. And so to grow the economy, we need to consume more energy, and money is just a marker for that. When we run into economic problems that we can't solve, we create debt. And debt functions as a claim on future energy and pulls it from the future to today. And on a finite planet, this is effectively taking resources from future people and future ecosystems. So this green chart here shows the GDP of the United States, and the black chart shows our debt. We have grown, I was born in the late 1960s, we have grown our debt more every single year than we've grown our GDP, and this is also unsustainable. Technology. So some technology creates new ways to produce energy, like a new geothermal or a new solar, or a way to make a power plant more efficient using coal or natural gas. But most technology is a vector for more energy more ways to consume energy. The average American household has 65 devices plugged into the wall, drawing down energy, even if they're turned off. And so what we do is we get more efficient over time, but the whole system grows over time. So most of our energy is doing things that we used to do manually or with draft animals. But since it's so cheap, it has allowed us to scale all of our energy use. This is kind of a complicated graph, but I'll briefly talk about it. The blue bars show milking a cow, and the blue shows the wage difference between milking by hand or using 180 times more energy using intermediate automated milking techniques. And then the tall blue bar on the right is a fully automated cow milking system that uses 400 times the energy as just a human does. So the story of industrialization has been humans adding vast amounts of fossil energy to processes we used to do manually, and this has boosted our wages and our profits and lowered the price of things. But what ends up happening is as energy prices double or triple, the benefits and the wages and the profits start to decline, and the really energy intensive processes like aluminum smelting or air travel or things like that, when prices triple, we are now operating at a loss, shown in the gray bars here in a tripling of energy. This is what happened to much of Europe last year after the Ukraine-Russia situation caused natural gas prices to spike. There were lots of companies that no longer could be profitable and had to outsource to different areas. So humans get more efficient over time because we get better inventions and we invent things. And we get about 1% more efficient over time, this shown for the last 200 years. But at the same time, we're getting more efficient. We're building more and more energy. So this shows that the biomass, coal, oil, natural gas, hydro, nuclear, solar, and wind as a global culture over the last 200 years. And what ends up happening is since 1990, because we've been so profitable, even though we have an increase of efficiency of 37%, our energy consumption has increased 63%. This is called Jevons paradox. And as long as GDP is our cultural goal, efficiency is just going to lead to funneling the profits back into an energy and ecosystem destroying system. So far, there has been no paradigm shift or green revolution because new energy sources are additive. They're not subtracting out from coal, oil, and gas. Our total global energy consumption continues to increase. Briefly on feelings, we have the same evolutionary brains as our ancestors. And we go through life trying to match the emotional states of our ancestors. And often this type of wiring is hijacked by supernormal stimuli on our phones and cognitive biases and looking at other humans and trying to emulate them to raise our social status. And all this stuff also has acted, especially with Madison Avenue and marketing, as a way to increase our consumption and not to increase our happiness. So we really have Stone Age minds in a modern, very high-tech culture. Many of you on the call probably don't need me to catalog the environmental problems of our time, but this entire economic system has a very deleterious effect on nature. You're all aware of climate change, the impact on oceans. There are other things that are not as often talked about. Since I've been alive on the planet, we've lost 70% of populations of animals, birds, insects, and fish. We are losing sperm count up to 2% a year due to endocrine disrupting chemicals. We're losing insect biomass due to pesticides between 1% and 2% a year. There's all kinds of environmental impacts. It's not just climate change. There is the expansion of the human enterprise is encroaching on the natural world. So this was a super basic overview, and I'm going to have some conclusions that our society is energy blind. We don't recognize the fundamental importance of fossil energy and the ecology of the world to human success. We tell stories about it's how our cleverness and our economic rules and our technology, but all of that is on a pyramid of fossil energy and productive Earth ecosystems. Climate change is not the problem. It is a symptom of a much larger dysfunction that we're living unsustainably on non-renewable resources. The global human economy right now is 19 terawatts continuously running. That's equivalent of 190 billion 100-watt light bulbs that are turned on 24/7. And this is a huge army of fossil helpers that are added to our global system. We can use technology and our cleverness to continue centuries into the future, but it's not going to be at the size and the scale. And we actually have to reduce the size and the scale, especially of our CO2 and our material footprint on nature, if we're going to have a livable biosphere. Economic growth has been the case for the last 150 years, with the exception of some energy crises and recessions. But in human history, it has been an anomaly. For the last 2,000 years, there were two 500-year periods of flat to declining growth. And we've all treated this last 50 years, especially, as if it's the way things should be. We've been living an anomalous existence. GDP is just a measure of how much stuff we burn. Every single good and service on the planet started somewhere with a small fire. Our national and our global objective is to raise GDP. It is disconnected from the well-being of our citizens and of our ecosystems. So we're going to have a serious conversation on how to use all this energy and materials instead of having billions of barrels of ancient sunlight turned into microliters of dopamine. We're going to have maybe have some alternative goals. Renewable energy is the right answer to the wrong question. We're using it right now to grow the total human system, and we have to think of a way to use it in tandem with declining fossil carbon towards some longer-term system. Some of the things I'm talking about here are uncomfortable to say at high-level political meetings or even within universities, because it has uncomfortable implications for our tenure and our salaries and how our institutions are going to manage the coming decades. And therefore, I've decided that my focus is on older people, 65 and older, and younger people, 25 and under, because they are mature enough, smart enough and they care enough to understand these things, but they're not part of the energy hungry metabolic superorganism that our society has become. They don't have bosses or babies or mortgages or things like that. So I think educating youth on the systems reality of our situation is one of the most important things we can do. We have 240 million college students in the world, and 30% of them are choosing business as a degree. With all this stuff in the backdrop, that business doesn't include all the things that I've been talking about so far. There are many pathways forward. I think economic growth, were it to continue, would mean that the size and the scale of the human economy would double every 30 years. So you teenagers on this call, that would mean that the size and the scale of the human economy will be 4 times larger than it is today when you're in your 70s and 80s. Is that possible? Is that desirable? What happens if that does happen? What happens if it doesn't happen? Those are pretty central questions. So a future human ecosystem, we're still going to need technology. We're still going to have some monetary marker. Hopefully we will use energy and materials smarter to get the same sort of neurotransmitter cocktail of our ancestors and less pollution. This is a favorite scientist of mine, Ilya Prigogine, had a quote: "When a system is far from equilibrium, small islands of coherence can shift the entire system." And this is my hope for maybe not the entire university system, but some educators around the world can use a system science lens to not only integrate how the human ecosystem fits together, but to prepare young humans in a fully stacked behavioral way with mental health, with skill sets, with learning about the subjects that matter to the future that is coming. And I have hope for that. So a few guideposts for the future in my short time with you today. And there's a lot of things that I would suggest. But one thing is we have become so siloed, and we only talk to people within our own topic or the thing, our special thing that we talk about. We're going to need to have a mimetic tribe diplomacy where we suppress our own identities and be part of a larger conversation to maintain a social contract and keep trust in our fellow citizens alive. This is difficult. We're probably going to have to learn to live with materially less stuff. This doesn't have to be a disaster. The average American consumes around 2,200 calories, but outside of of real food. But outside of our body, we consume 220,000 kilocalories per day. So the average American has a 100 times exosomatic footprint in the lights, in the gasoline, in the airlines, in the shopping centers, in the high rises, and all that stuff. We don't need 100 times more energy than our bodies physically need to live happy and healthy lives. If I ask everyone on this call, what were the best 5 memories of your life? If you're like most people, most of them did not require a lot of energy or money. They were time with loved ones, or playing cards, or a board game with a bunch of your friends, or spending time in nature, or hanging out with your dog, or things like that. So the only reason that we're on this rat race is it's what everyone else in our society is striving for, but we're probably given fossil fuel depletion and this energy surplus. It's like we're a cheetah chasing a gazelle. The gazelles are getting smaller, and we might have to shift to rabbits, metaphorically. We are going to need tech. Tech is going to be very important to livable futures, but we probably need to think about investing in appropriate tech, maybe sodium batteries instead of lithium batteries. We're ultimately going to have to find technology that gives us the human brain services that we really need, instead of a lot of virtual reality and energy intensive technology that gives us fleeting experiences. So as young people, I'm sure you are tired of older people like me giving you recommendations. So instead, I'm going to give you some challenges. Social media is an amazing tool used to connect and start movements around the world. And a lot of my own organization's work is based on it. It's created an important place in our world. Yet study after study is telling us that we are increasingly happier the more time we're not on social media. And the energy requirements that come from transferring all that data around the world lightning fast is almost all based on fossil fuels. Almost 20% of our electricity use goes to powering the cloud and related devices. So being more mindful about how we use this would go a long way for us personally and for our impact on Earth. We are social primates. We compare ourselves to others. My suggestion is to focus on your absolute happiness rather than your comparative situation comparing yourself to others. This is easier said than done, but it's easy to get wrapped up in social comparison and flexing. And even at college, you're showing which t-shirts or shoes or things you have. And it takes deep personal reflection and maturity to be happy by yourself instead of being externally validated. And be aware of this when thinking about a purchase. Think about if it's truly serving an increase in your well-being or if there are other subliminal reasons. Go out into nature. This doesn't need to be traveling around the country or the globe. This is more likely explore your own state or province than you have in a long time. Explore your local surroundings, learn to know the flora and the fauna, and learn to forage and re-engage your personal connection with nature that you are a part of, like this squirrel. Give yourself a 24-hour vacation from other people and electronic media in a place that you personally find meaningful, and ask yourself, who do I wish to be in this life? Why do I wish that? And how might that be made real? The answers are for you alone, and you'll find you'll be glad to have them. We are not alive at a normal time. What's happening is an emergent response of decisions and phenomenon that happened long ago. There are no easy answers. And I think one of the best pieces of advice or a challenge to you is when you're with other human beings talking about things that are of value and importance to you, even if there are no solutions provided, it reduces your cortisol, which is a stress hormone. It boosts your helper T cells, which help your immune system. It is very important to talk and process with other humans. And as young people, please try and surround yourself by other young men and women who share your principles. And hopefully you have a life ethic. Being on this call, being concerned about climate change, find the people that you want to share this journey with. Second to last, do something for the benefit of someone else that nobody else, including that person, will ever know. Examine closely the complex feelings this causes to arise within you as a first step in sorting social motivation from personal altruism at a young age. This funny-looking character's name is DJ White. He was the co-founder of Greenpeace International. He's also written 3 college textbooks with me that are the basis of my class, Reality 101. This is when he was 23. He had a geology degree and he lived in Indianapolis. All he knew was that he loved cetaceans, whales and dolphins, but there were no whales and dolphins in Indiana. So he bought a one-way ticket to Hawaii and volunteered to clean dolphin poop out of the aquarium cages. And eventually he became the single most successful environmental activist of our time dealing with ocean issues. His organization, Earth Trust, stopped all the drift nets in the oceans in the 1980s. He stopped the only dolphin drive kill ever, and it's not even public because that was part of the agreement in Taiwan. He had a deal with international tuna companies to have dolphin-free tuna. All of this because he just took a single step in a direction that was something he was passionate about and he cared about. He had no plan. He didn't know what was going to come next, and it was okay to not know that. He just took a step in the direction. Follow where your gut leads you. Not only will you be intrinsically motivated in the world, better than following the money, but you're going to gain experiences that are unique to you and making you a unique contributor to society. I don't need to tell you all that really our blue-green planet that we consider home is at stake. You're all on this call, so you're aware of that. This protecting Earth's ecosystems and the 10 million other species we share the planet with is what I'm most passionate about in my work. And my final closing message is to protect the Earth, we need to understand the full scope of the systemic problem we face and respond accordingly. We all have a role to play. At the same time, we have lives to lead. You all have full, rich, and purposeful lives ahead of you. Don't forget to experience in them. Thank you.